I'm going to call the meeting to order. We're all good? I'm calling to the meeting of June 13th, 2018 to order. Thank you all for being here. We have audience. I love it. We're getting to the end of the year. Graduation is next week, and it's a very exciting time. We'll start with recognitions, which I believe is our yearbook.
All right.
Correct? Our recognitions for today are
Yes, yearbook. I'm sorry, I'm a page behind.
Yearbook staff, we'd love to hear from you. Can you tell us what's going on?
So our book this year is.
Thank you very much.
We got the beat.
Perfect.
I like it. That's great.
Perfect.
So there are many people, specifically in our grade, involved in music, theater, and also music is such a universal way to relax, pump yourself up, all that. So we decided that the best theme for us would be music. So I'm gonna snap a picture.
I am with I'm so subtle.
So we decided that our theme this year would be geared towards music because that's something everyone can enjoy no matter what kind of genre they like or how or when they listen to it. So the hints of music that are here in the book are, we have the staff on the cover, we have the notes, and then throughout the book there's the notes and the staffs, but also we try to integrate as much music related things as possible without being like too much. So what happened was we ended up asking the teachers and the rest of the staff their favorite songs. So we ended up putting that under the little faculty picture. We asked the teams, all the sports teams, what their favorite pump-up song was, and we put that in as well. And then for the seniors, we asked in their senior shout-outs, typically they'll write a shout-out to their friends, family, whatnot. We asked this year that they also put their favorite songs. So yeah,
Perfect.
all the music, all the different types of music are in the book, and we're really happy with the finished product, and we hope
Well,
you enjoy
congratulations. It's a big undertaking, and we're very thankful that we get copies of it, and we get to look at everything that happened at the high school over the past year. So thank you both very much. And the rest of your team, how many people were on your committee?
I mean, participation kind of fluctuates throughout the year depending on people's seasons and stuff, but I'd say we had probably upwards of like 10 people.
It's a big book for 10 people. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
I think we all got them. Oh, Matt,
I have
Mr.
one.
Curtis already has
All
one.
right.
Yeah.
You can just,
I'll leave it here.
Perfect. Moving on, any other recognitions?
We have the Kathleen
Kathleen
McGowan.
McGowan, yes, we do. As you know, once we received that generous donation from the Kathleen McGowan Foundation, I believe it's our third year of awarding seniors, 5 seniors that represent our 5 elementary schools with $1,000 scholarships. One of our awardees was able to be here tonight. Nicole Brienne is here, and she will be attending Marist College, and we'll let you talk in just a few minutes. But there were 4 other individuals, and Nicole, you were from Central School.
Yes.
Okay. From Terriffill School, we had Tiaja Howard, and she will be attending Manchester Community College. Mary Firestone attending Central Connecticut State University. For Latimer Lane, Allison Driscoll, who will be going to Salve Regina University. And Squadron Line is Catherine Keenan, who's going to the University of Connecticut. And I've received very nice thank you notes from all of them. It's just a wonderful evening at the scholarship event at the high school to be able to award these 5 young people money that will help them as they enter into their college career. So Nicole, thank you for coming tonight, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your college that you're going to and what you're going to study.
Sure. Should I stand up?
Please do, please do.
So my name's Nicole Briand. Like Miss Marie said, I attended Central Elementary School, and I'll be going to Marist College to study secondary education and biology. And what I really like about Marist is that they start like student observations as soon as freshman year. So I believe first semester I have to do 5 hours of classroom observation just to get me started. And they also have a program that gets you certified in secondary ed and special needs education. So I thought that was really helpful because now there's a lot of integrated classrooms. So even if I'm a regular teacher, I'll still be dealing with students who have 504s and IEPs and stuff like that.
Sounds like you've got a great plan in front of you. Come back and tell us how it all works out. Thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
Nicole, this is the person you're going to want to speak.
That's right. Be very nice to Neil. Neil, be very nice to her. Wonderful. I'm going to read no more announcements. Wonderful. I think we'll start with communications.
No.
Isabel?
Public.
Public audience. Anyone have anything they'd like to share? Moving on to, we do. Would you like to share? Public audience.
Okay, I didn't know. First time here. Thank you. I'm Dwayne Royce, live here in Harvest Hill. Been here for 12, 15 years. I'd like to talk about pickleball lines on the tennis courts. Be added to the tennis courts in Henry James or the high school. The Henry James Middle School has 4 tennis courts. It happens, and the parking lot's never full. The Simsbury High School is 8 tennis courts. They're not finished. They haven't been painted. The nets are not up. Which is being rebuilt this time. The surface is complete, but the lines aren't done. The high school had 13 as a spring sport. Tennis is a spring sport, which had 13 girls and 9 boys for the tennis courts. I am I've been a senior citizen for a while. I'm recently retired, so now I can do the pickleball. And pickleball is being played in Avon, Farmington, Bloomfield, Granby, all the surrounding towns, and we're playing it here. And Phil has been the organizer of this. There's more seniors will play for health and social mixing if Simsbury does lines more courts for pickleball. The Simsbury youth are well served by the town at the recreation department and the schools. The Simsbury seniors, I don't mean the graduates, I mean
We have all kinds of seniors.
yeah. Simsbury seniors own the home, pay the taxes for the youth. And I propose that the school look at adding pickleball lines to the tennis courts at Henry James or the high school, which is it does not interfere with tennis. Tennis lines are white, the pickleball lines are yellow. And it'd be a very small expense to add that to the contractor to finish at the high school, or to add to the Henry James. I just mentioned I'm very very satisfied with the school system here in Simsbury. I do have a graduate this year, and he's been well served by the school. Now maybe the school could help us out, continue with the seniors, and that's what I.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. I think that is something that we can look into, and
I appreciate it.
we can get back to you on that once we look into it.
Okay.
But thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, and we'd be happy to look into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kids can play it too.
It's true, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's for all ages,
Yes.
which is great. Thank you for coming. We appreciate having you here. I'm on to you now, Isabel.
Okay. So I have only a few announcements just because we're wrapping up the school year. But so we are nearing the end of the 2017 to 2018 school year. So at the elementary school, recognition ceremonies, school picnics, and lots of other fun events have been underway. And then at the high school, final exams will start tomorrow, and graduation is less than a week away. The graduation ceremony will be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 19th at Iron Horse Park, as usual. And then congratulations to all students, especially our graduates, on their successes in another school year. And I hope everyone has a great summer. And then to the members of the board, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. I have felt so welcomed by you all and have learned so much over these past 5 months. My time as a student representative is something that I will never forget. I promise I won't forget it. Although I'm so excited for my new beginnings in the fall, I'm going to miss you all very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel.
Appreciate it.
You've been great and very helpful, and we really have enjoyed having you on the board. So come back and check in with us, and let us know how things are going. It's a very exciting time for you. We're happy for you. Jennifer?
Tomorrow, I will be in DC on behalf of National School Board Association. It's summertime, so we will be starting to rev up the federal legislative agenda that we'll be working on all summer and fall in preparation for January, which is really around the corner in terms of legislative. Now that all the states have passed their budgets, we'll be discussing that quite a bit, and then hopefully, we will come up with the beginning of something for the next congressional session, which is really around the corner. So that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm all set. The only thing I would add is I suspect that the predominant memory of Isabel will be, it was so boring.
She'll never admit it, though. She had to sign that in her contract.
I could read through somebody being nice,
She's too nice to admit that, exactly. Jeff?
Nothing at this time.
Pleased to report that we've begun the process of searching for a new Tariffville principal with administrative cabinet screening interviews yesterday, and then we head into 2 rounds of committee interviews involving many stakeholders at Tariffville School, June 20th and then June 25th, and hope to be identifying a finalist for the board's approval by right around the July 1 timetable, so.
Great, thank you very much.
So I want to pass around the 30th edition of the Connecticut Student Writers magazine. So this is the most current. We had 46 students that were honored this year in their writing, that's like a high watermark that we've ever had. So that's really exciting. There were 1,500 students that entered into this contest. We had 25 teachers and teachers also that had some recognition, but Mary Ann Lindquist won a gold medal. Maureen Billings and Peg Bruno were honored at the silver level, and Lisa Jacobs and Missy Champagne were honored at the bronze level. So not only do our students get involved in processing and creating writing for the magazine, but our teachers are so supportive of it, and they deserve some recognition for being, so supportive of this opportunity. So that's this year's Connecticut Writers Magazine.
Thank you very much.
Nothing.
Excellent. Moving on, we have minutes. The minutes of the, where are the minutes? Minutes of the May 22nd meeting. Anyone have anything they want to?
Move to accept.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Anyone have anything to say? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Personnel?
Just one item for your action tonight. We've had a resignation of a teacher, a PE and health teacher from the high school. Chris Kanata started at Squadron Line with us before moving to the high school and has been with us for 5 years. Resignation's effective June 30th, 2018, and we wish Chris well as he pursues some other opportunities.
Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion.
Move that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Chris Kanata effective June 30, 2018.
Second? Second. Any conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, and good luck. Unaffiliated salary adjustments, yeah. We on you, Burke? Matt? Mike?
I think you can.
I think as
handle it.
everyone knows, this is the time of year when we have a couple of things that we have to deal with before the end of the fiscal year. They're both important issues. The first one is increase in the compensation for our unaffiliated employees. So I have a motion that says move that the salary range for the unaffiliated Board of Education employees and salaries for the central office administrators be increased by 2.5% for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. And as you know, that increase is consistent with our overall budget goals.
Anyone have any conversation, questions?
Do you have anything you want to add?
Anything you want to add?
Just that as we've done with other staff, we have changed contributions to health insurance for the upcoming year, and there's been shifts on a regular annual basis, so that's part of the overall consideration.
Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion if no one has anything further to say.
I put the motion out.
You put the motion? We need a second?
Second.
second.
Todd? No one has anything else to say? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
The second compensation is with respect to our superintendent's contract. And I would add to this that, just remind everybody that it's the goal of the board, has been historically the goal of the board, to maintain a competitive alignment, if you will, for all the people in our district, whether it's faculty members or unaffiliated or the various bargaining groups. And that also applies, of course, to our superintendent. The superintendent compensation structures tend to be a little complicated and a little unique to that position, so it always takes a little bit of time. It ends up being a fair bit of work, gathering data and sort of analyzing what it all means. And as you all know, there's a lot of discussion involved in this process as well. And I thank everybody for your patience as we've worked through and explaining what everything means. What I think is fair to say is that the current compensation package of our superintendent is, in our minds, collectively from the board, no longer consistent with that overall goal of being competitive in every sort of component of the compensation package. However, this year's recommended changes or moves are a move in the right direction to correcting that, except that I would remind the board that based on our discussions, we're going to have a little more work to do in the coming year, and the plan is to begin the discussion about the superintendent's overall compensation contract and package with the budget process in the next year. And the recommendation is that in next year's budget discussions, we should provide an allowance that would give us the ability to correct some of the remaining discrepancies between our superintendent's package and those of other competitive districts. So with that as background, I would move that the Board of Education approve the superintendent's contract for the 2018 to 2021 period with a salary increase of 3.0% for 2018-2019.
I entertain a second.
I'll second.
Conversation? Thoughts?
I apologize for my voice.
Very
And we're all listening
interesting.
so hard.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone's help.
Thank you very much for all the work you do, Mike. We appreciate it. Moving on to the specifications for Henry James Memorial School, Phase 3 project.
Okay. So I wanted to just point out that in the last item in your handout, I just included the visual. That's a slight update. It's not a final version, but to what we've seen in the past is as we've talked for many meetings in several years about what this Phase 3 project would actually look like. So for those of you that want to have something to visualize, it's just a quick aid for that. So the board is being asked to approve the educational specifications tonight for Phase 3, and it's a requirement of the state grant process. That state grant is due to be filed by June 30th, and I'm working with our architects at Castle Blues who helped us with this process to make sure that we have that application finished, and we're actually going to meet with the state on the 20th to go in and discuss this, which will give us the opportunity, if there is any feedback, to come back to you one more time before June 30th if there was anything that they saw, that there was any feedback that was sort of missing from our project. But while there's about 11 pages worth of specifications, you know, it's a requirement of a larger grant project of the state that you really define instructionally what your goal is, and you see that, you know, really the first 5 or 6 pages speak to the curriculum end of things, of what the goals of the project are, and then beginning about halfway through, we talk about more about the physical space, how we need to increase the square footage of the science classrooms for one of the key aspects of this project. We also have to obviously construct new square footage for new program areas, namely the auditorium, roughly 7,500 square feet and 400 seats, as well as the library media center and the various aspects of that. It helps to describe some of the code areas that we would look to fix as a part of this project. There's asbestos to be removed or abated in certain areas. There's many aspects of the fire suppression system, which is, shaded in red on your plan. Roughly 50% of the building still needs to be finished. And so we really get into some of the details of what the project is hoping to fix for us. So then ultimately, the last page or two is looking at some of the building systems, getting into the fact that we would expect to be replacing the PA system and the clock system, the bell system, the fire, the fire alarm system. Security would continue to expand the current hardware and the current software that we have for this building. And we also mention a little bit about the site. So that is captured here in words because that's what's required of this of the grant process, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you had about this, any detailed questions that you'd like to pursue. But this is the essence of what we've been looking at for the past several years, just translated into a format that the state actually gives us categories that we have to touch on. One of the categories that we were required to talk about roughly halfway through was what the enrollment projections are for the next eight years, and that's part of the formula that they look at to calculate the square footage and what they're willing to pay for. So if there's questions on any particular section, we can go section by section, or if you feel that you're clear on what these words are trying to explain to the state, then I'm really just looking for your formal.
Does anyone have any questions? Any concerns?
I went through it in some detail. It was very thorough. I have no questions.
Thank you, and you understand that better than any of us sitting here, so I appreciate that guidance. I think that's great. Thank you so much for keeping us informed as to the progress of that. Moving on, a gift from
We just need to ask for the motion, and I do have to point out that on the recommended motion, it's phase 3. That's a typo there.
I would entertain a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Who made the motion? Jen did. Jen made the motion, Lydia second, and we voted on it.
It's important because we have to
Oh,
provide
do you
these
not wanna make
minutes
the
to the state as proof that these have been approved by you all. So I know
We need to confirm the
she needs
motion.
to get
A
it down.
motion was made by,
Burke wants to go again.
someone make
I
the
think you were
motion.
looking for the motion.
I was looking for a motion.
I'll just motion.
You're going to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. And Lydia's seconding the motion. And we are all in favor.
Great, thank you.
And anyone opposed? Still good. Sorry about that. Terrifield PTO.
So this is very straightforward. We're just, we're asking for the board to approve acceptance of the PTO's generous gift of $2,000 from the Terriffill PTO to offset the cost of the Camp Jewel trip for the fifth grade students.
Camp Jewel. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move that the proposed gift of $2,000 to Terriffill School from the Terriffill Parent Teachers Organization be approved.
I'd like a second.
Second.
Anyone have anything they'd like to say?
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Always appreciating the PTO. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Wonderful. Moving on to the Carl D. Perkins Secondary Supplemental Enhancement Grant Sustainability Plan approval.
All right, so I'll talk about this for a few minutes, but I've invited Joncia Litwinick to also be here
Wonderful.
For any questions or discussion that you have. But in March, the state put forward a supplemental grant for the Carl D. Perkins Enhancement Grant, which is something that doesn't happen every year, as far as I know, or...
It does happen, but they put parameters on how you can use the money.
Right.
So we haven't always applied.
We haven't always applied. So Joncia worked very hard to put forward the grant, and it's really geared toward the career and technology education departments. And we received an award of $31,439. And we cannot spend that money until we present it to you as the Board of Education, and you give approval for us to go forward with this. But the intent is to purchase at least a laser cutter. I'm not sure of the cost, but Joncia, can you speak a little bit more about the intent of the grant and how it will enhance our program at Simsbury High School?
Sure, I'll keep it short. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to buy a laser cutter, which we've wanted for a long time. It does a lot of engraving, it's precision cutting. It'll cut materials, but thin, and it doesn't cut metal, okay? But it'll cut a lot of other materials that we can have. And it will be added to like our CNC machines that we have already, and really trying to make the program stay relevant and have the kids have that experience with how to use tools. And you know, not everyone necessarily goes to a four-year college, and there's a lot of jobs out there that are for people in the technical area. And so we're trying to provide that experience for students. So we also know that having this kind of equipment has given some of our kids that do go on to engineering programs a leg up on others. We've had students that have been able to do things that like juniors are only able to do, but because they already knew how to use equipment and they already had experience and they could lead the project. So that's really exciting for us to be able to keep giving them these opportunities. And the other area that we're addressing is our automotive program. Our two automotive teachers, Mr. Warner and Mr. Mikulski, have been working with Mitchell's to see like where we might want to improve our program, and one of the areas is in electronics. So this will help the kids be able to do training modules for electronics and also then diagnostics. And hopefully that'll help lead to some internships that they've been talking about. So we do see this is having multi-layers in how it's going to help our program.
That's wonderful, and the work you did to get this available to us is amazing. I really am very thankful, because that makes a big difference to our whole programming, and we really appreciate it.
And the money does have to be spent by September, so...
September 30th.
Yes.
That's fun.
So
That's a problem you can solve,
But the
right?
good news is that, that it will be in place for the, the relatively start of this school year. So that's good news. So we're looking for you for an approval from the Board of Education for this
I'll entertain a
award.
motion.
I'll move that the Carl D. Perkins Secondary Supplemental Enhancement Grant Sustainability Plan be approved.
Thank you very much, and again, many thanks to
That's terrific.
all of the people involved in this, and
Yeah, good work.
I'm going to come see it in the fall.
I
want a field trip.
I would invite you all to come and see the wonderful work that we're doing now. It's incredible the creativity that the students have.
Like to do
I would love a field trip.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we put that
Come
on.
on down.
All those in favor, do you have a question?
No, I just have a comment on this. I'm glad that this is coming forward tonight, because this is something we'll be talking about with NSBA, with our other board of directors from around the country, because the Carl Perkins is a federal grant. And this is something that I will share this. In fact, I will, bring it up and talk about this, so as our district, what we have done with this, because, well, it's interesting to see what districts have done with the money, if they have received it around the country or not. So this is actually very good timing to have this discussion.
It's wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
moving on to policy revisions.
We've run these through the policy committee. You've had 2 full board readings. I got nothing left. They're ready to go. Ready for your vote.
I think Isabel had a lot of questions.
Can we adopt these all as one?
Yeah.
One motion?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
I would entertain a motion.
Move to adopt both new and revised Board of Education policies as noted, effective June 13th, 2018.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any conversations? Again, a lot of hard work by the policy committee and Neil. We really appreciate it to bring us up to standard, and we are thankful for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And thank you very much. Moving on to our Board of Ed summer schedule. I don't have it in front of me because I messed up my whole, my thing is not right. I'm all confused today. So our meeting schedule, during the meeting, we have summer June 26th, July 10th, 24th, August 14th, and 28th. And in the past practice, we have canceled those meetings in lieu, and if we need a meeting or need to come together, we would have a special meeting during the summer. I'm recommending that we make the motion that we make the motion on this document, and
You want me to make the motion?
I'd like you to make the motion.
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Education cancel regular board meetings scheduled on,
I think we changed it, so we are going to keep the 26th.
no, that's not on the motion.
Right.
That's all right.
Motion that we put it at the top.
So it's in the motion.
Yeah.
We want to
so-
cancel the 26th, or you want to keep the 26th?
It's not in the motion. and that's-
So we want to keep the 26th.
Yeah, that's not
Yes.
on the, yeah.
Motion, so
So
it's right.
July 10, July 24, August 14, and August 28th.
Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
And we will be having at least one special meeting when we find the principal of Terriffill School. So that will be happening. Very excited as that comes around. Moving on to school start time.
Okay, so this is our June presentation to you. As you know, we've had a year-long study by the leadership team that was held at the high school, but consisted of 30 members that represented students, faculty, administrators, and parents. And Laura is here tonight as a parent that sat on the committee.
Thank you for coming.
And so this actually, as you know, came out of the previous year when the discussion around student stress. And it was a topic that came up that we said we would spend the year looking at it. You know, in the end, when we think about our school start times, whatever decisions we move forward with, we want to make sure that we're making them in the best interest of our students. And that's what we have to keep at the center of the conversation as we look at this. So clearly, we had several meetings over the course of the year. We did a literature review. We had gathered stakeholder feedback from students, from teachers, and from our families. What is important to note on that survey, which I had shared with you back in our February meeting, was that it was really an opportunity to gather people's opinion and perspective without any kind of formal teaching or any information that we had provided to these people. But we needed that to really begin the conversation. We did have a presentation by Dr. McNally, a sleep expert from UConn, who talked about adolescent sleep habits. And we also had good conversation regarding the impact of athletics and transportation. So clearly, what our job was to do was to explore the potential benefits and identify questions that we have without making any formal decisions. It was up to us to present this to you as the Board of Education here at the end of the school year. So one of the areas that you hadn't heard when I gave the previous presentation, but Neil had worked with J.R. Salter and Sue Kakamo to really look at our transportation. It's something that hadn't been looked at in some time, but it allowed us to get some information about transportation issues if we were going to rethink school start times. So I've asked Neil to give us a brief overview of that presentation so that you have information to work from.
So Sue and JR and I met once a month, starting at the start of the school year, to take a look comprehensively at the transportation system and see whether it could support changed school start time. So what the first of 4 slides I'm going to show you, there's probably a 20-slide presentation that went to the committee, and if the board would like to see that, we can forward that to you as well. But here, what you're looking at is current conditions. This is how our bus system works right now in Simsbury. A 3-wave system obviously starts with the secondary wave of Simsbury High School and Henry James. The earliest routes start right around 6:30, 6:35 in the morning for pickup time in order to do a 7:32 start to school. You probably know that means a drop-off at both schools. That creates some interesting traffic patterns. So half the fleet drops off at Henry James, half the fleet drops off at Simsbury High School, and then they have to go to the other school. So it takes a little bit longer. 29 buses to accomplish that across the town. Those 29 buses are owned by the Simsbury Public Schools. There are other buses in Salter's fleet that Salter's owns. The 29 buses that are part of our capital non-recurring, that we own 29, and that's to cover these routes. The buses then pull out of the secondary, head to the 4 smaller elementary schools, Central Latimer, Terriffill, Tooten, for an 8:15 start. 27 of the 29 buses continue on that route. And then the third for Squadron Line and St. Mary's with the later school start time of 8:45. It takes 19 buses to accomplish a third run. And we can break that down a little bit. In addition, you can see just some notes at the bottom. We do run a University of Hartford magnet school bus. We've chosen to do that. We don't have to do that if we could give that route to crack if needed. And secondly, we also require 2 buses because some students who take secondary buses to Henry James for an advanced 6th grade math class then have to get back to their home elementary schools, and we use 2 buses for that purpose. So we, knowing that was our current condition, what were the parameters of our transportation study? And we started early on to develop options if we moved the start time back half an hour to approximately 8 o'clock, 45 minutes to 8:15, or a full hour to 8:30 in the morning. We certainly were asked to consider the financial impact. Some of the towns that have looked at school start time changes have come out that their transportation budget would explode if they had to change the pattern that they use. And some of the considerations, we wanted to know that if we reversed school start times, meaning have the elementary schools start before the secondary, how early would you be asking elementary school students to start school and therefore be out at the bus stops? The simple swap of it would show you that your youngest students out at the bus stop at 6:35 in the morning probably wouldn't be super palatable to a lot of folks putting a 5 or a 6-year-old out at a bus stop at that time in the morning. Conversely, if we push back all the times, how late would elementary school start? And on the other end, how late would they be getting home at the end of the day? And so what our early conclusion is that for this to have any realistic look of working, that could we turn a 3-wave bus system into a 2-wave bus system? And that's what we pursued. So I'm going to show you the next slide, and it's going to look like that left-hand side is just a chart of eliminating buses. This was months of work with Sue Kakamo, looking at bus routes, JR, reviewing them, and what we were trying to do is say, what was the minimum number of buses given lower enrollment now at the elementary level that we felt we could, if we were trying to conserve bus routes, how many could we save, if you will. And what you can see is we eliminated one route from Central School. We were able to eliminate 2 from both Latimer Lane and Tooten Hills. At Squadron Line, we have 13 current routes. We felt like we could get it down to 10, and with a potential other, there is one the new development up by the International Skating Center, Dorset Crossing. That is zoned for Terrafil, but what you remember, it should be zoned for Terrafil, but you remember when it was built, we didn't know if Terrafil could take in that capacity of a new development. So those students go to Squadron, even though it should be on a Terrafil bus route. If we moved Dorset Crossing back to Terrafil, you could probably save one more route and get it down to 9 routes. And Terrafil, 5 to 4 routes, and as I said, Tooten Hills. So what you were trying to do is, can we get in that ballpark of around 29 buses? We're using 29 already for the secondary. Could we get the elementary down to approximately 29? When you add that up, it comes to around 30 or 31 buses. So you can get into the ballpark. One of the reasons why we didn't want to just say, do we want to add more buses onto the route as it currently exists? JR, we could buy more buses. It would be very challenging for JR to find more drivers. There just isn't a huge market there. So our study went in with the idea of keep the fleet approximately the same size. The big catch on that is that right now we do, as a way of transporting one of the non-public schools, as you know, we transport St. Mary's students in that third wave. We currently use 6 buses for St. Mary's students. That is because St. Mary's is very centrally located in town, but to get that number of kids, they have to go to every corner of Simsbury. And if you didn't use enough buses to kind of spread them out around town, the route would be over an hour long. And so that's why, so it's not an extremely efficient system, but it's how it's working right now in terms of St. Mary's. The chart on the right is showing you approximately how many Simsbury students attend the various non-public schools in Simsbury. And the law on transportation of non-public school students, when you pass that budget every year, states that you either have to provide transportation to the school for your resident children who are attending non-public schools, or you provide a reimbursement to those families. So currently, we are providing reimbursement to families to the other schools. If we tried to transport to Masters, Cobb, Ethel Walker, it would be a really complex bus system. We've chosen instead to do a reimbursement. If we are going to be serious about this study, one of the things we're going to have to talk about is figuring out how we're going to do St. Mary's, because it's been a long-standing tradition that we transport St. Mary's students, and if we were going to do it through the two-wave system, it would be a real challenge. And that is definitely one of the challenges. I have had a few meetings with the principal of St. Mary's to let her know that we're looking at this and talking about this, but it would take a lot more collaboration with that community to talk about what the possibilities would be.
But essentially, you would need to free those buses up.
We would need to free those
For our
buses
fleet.
up.
Correct.
In order to, kind of put them with the other element, in order to put Squadron at the same time as the other
The other
4
schools.
elementary schools.
How crowded do the buses get?
They're not very crowded at all.
No, but with a two-wave.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
just trying
sorry,
to figure
yeah.
out the math of like,
Not not the St. Mary's buses, the normal buses.
Normal buses,
Yeah, we tried to say if you assign about 55 or 60 kids onto the bus, fewer than that will actually take the bus, and you can fit, I think you can fit 46 students two to a seat, 48 students two to a seat. So we're pretty comfortable that the number of students we put on there is gonna work. Where it could be tricky, we don't know, is we actually think part of the reason why our secondary ridership is so low A, it's not very cool to take the bus, but B, the routes are so early that a lot of families do choose to say, sleep in a little more and I'll drive you to school.
I've been in that traffic before.
And
That's it.
so the last slide that I'm going to show you is looking at the options of if you moved. So we created 3 options. One that is a half-hour later start time, and what you can see is if you started the secondary run to get to a start time for school of 8 o'clock, it would take the other 5 elementary schools and move all of them to the current squadron line time of an 8:45 start and a 3:20 finish to school. If you tried to do 45 minutes, it's the same thing. You're just adding 15 minutes more, so an 8:15 secondary start, which would push you back to a 9 o'clock elementary start. And then the third wave, if you were going to start secondary school at 8:30, our belief is that you would have to flip and do the elementary schools first, because otherwise elementary school would really not be starting till 9:15 and getting out really late in the afternoon. So that shows you an option of routes for elementary starting shortly after 7 o'clock, getting to school for a 7:45 start time, and then a secondary run that would start school at 8:30. So those are possibilities. We have not polled,
And again, this doesn't even include St. Mary's, so.
Correct.
Correct.
This is just an exercise more than a feasibility at the moment.
This is an exercise. It's a good way
And
to
it is
put
the leadership team that has seen this. This is now more public, obviously. And certainly, as we get into future studies, this would have to be put out to people to get their impression of what this would look like
We need a
as
lot of
well.
feedback on that. Thank you.
So clearly, as we researched over the course of the year, the research and our sleep study expert, there's national organizations that say, more sleep time for adolescents is critically important for their health and wellness, that there's higher academic performance that goes along with it. Obviously, it increases more positive culture at schools through the literature that we read. And according to our sleep expert, that the consistency of getting up and going to bed is most important for students throughout the week is really important. For the athletics, what is noted through the literature is that athletic performance does increase with more sleep time. There's more higher GPA averages, test scores, lower absenteeism, positive behavioral and psychological outcomes for students. And we also had talked about the opportunity to think about more curricular opportunities for students at the high school of embedding more strength and conditioning courses at the high school, because not only do students in athletics go out to their practice, but they're also required to do an hour of strength and conditioning. So that's really a lifelong skill. It's something that we hadn't really thought about, that we said that's something that could be considered. And obviously, our transportation study that Neil put together seems to be cost neutral, but certainly there's more study that needs to go on with that. Obviously, there's questions and challenges that go along with this. It's really about the availability of our athletic fields. We have one field with lights. We've talked about that quite a bit. Certainly something that would have to be talked about in more detail to be able to coordinate the academic and the athletic schedules. For students, the typical start time for teams is 3:45 now?
3:45 games.
At the end of the day, if school got out later, we'd have to really think that through of how our students would participate in athletics. The loss of instructional time, as students, if they have to leave for games that take transportation time, how much instruction would they lose, as well as we have many teachers that are coaches, and they would be leaving their classroom as well. So that's something that we're thinking about. Neil talked about the transportation for St. Mary's. Clearly, something more that we have to talk about. Big concern regarding our open choice students. what time would they be getting picked up or dropped off at the end of the day? The routes that Neil and JR really were looking at, they have not put any of the buses out to look at what those routes look like yet. We haven't gone on a bus and ridden them to see what the length of time would be or what it would look like. So there's lots of questions. The cost considerations are preliminary, but, we have to really think through these challenges as we move forward. So when we put this together, we thought about future work and next steps that are up for consideration. We'd like to look at other districts that have started in the past year. Newtown is one of them. Greenwich is another district that started with a later start time this year. We'd like to know how it fared for them over the course of their first year. We believe that a survey of our stakeholders would be critically important. Having seen these three options, we want to know what people think about that. We'd want to know what parents and families say about childcare for their young ones before and after school, and the cost of that goes along with it. Clearly, the athletic facilities, we'd have to continue talking about that. What would we need for lights? What would we need for fields? There were other questions put up by the leadership team about teacher contract, and are there any issues with our teacher contracts in regard to changing school start times? Homework policy, that's something that really sort of rose to the top, saying, you can't continue to expect kids to do the kind of work that they're doing with shorter amount of time to do the work. So really looking at the homework for students. Periods of the day was another question that the leadership came up with. Can we sort of change the start of the day but lessen it? And we're held for 900 minutes for instruction.
Hours.
I'm sorry, I always say minutes. I did it with 900 hours. 900 hours. 900 hours, and we're about at 965 hours. So there's not a lot of room to be shifting that at this point right now, at least at the high school, and the middle school is around 940 hours of instruction. And again, the transportation. So with all this said, we were not put together to make a decision. We were put together to identify the benefits and questions that came up with rethinking school start times. We believe there are a lot of items that should be considered for further discussion, but wanted to bring this forward to you as the Board of Ed to help and get your opinion of what direction we should go in. And Matt, I don't know if you have further.
No, I think those are all great points, and I appreciate the committee's work. I know it was a lot of hours, and, just the transportation alone and the complexities of it. Now that you actually have tangible scenarios, I see that as a very key piece of information potentially to go out and get feedback on. When we surveyed interest early on, it was much more conceptual. It wasn't based in anything that would really allow somebody to say, how will that impact daycare? What does the end of the day look like now for elementary school students? Because any of these shifts are pretty dramatic in that when you go to the two tiers, you're going to move all those elementary start times back, and we would really need to know, I think, the impact on family. Just for me, that's a starting point to provide the board that information. I think it's hard for you to get much deeper into it without knowing what all our stakeholders would really know about those different things. That's just my take.
Anyone else have any comments, questions, thoughts?
Did we look at just the high school as opposed to the high school and Henry James? If you moved just the high school to later?
No, we didn't.
No.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing to think about.
I believe that's what West Hartford's looking at. I would have to go back. I think they would have them staggered at different times. I know, Aaron, you were closer to the work
Right.
there. I think they were looking
They have three
just
waves.
at the high school.
They have three waves, yeah.
They also have a much more complex transportation
Yes, they do.
situation in that they do provide busing to all the privates, not mileage. So they originally thought, West Hartford, in my conversations, and I know Aaron worked with them closely, that they would be voting on this at the end of the year. They decided not to do that. They ended up in a place, I think, where we sit today that we feel we have some real questions we need to answer to put people in a position to make the best decision they can. So they're kind of in the same boat that we are right now.
Anyone have any other questions?
I was on the leadership committee. You talked about it a lot and had some separate meetings as well. And, there's everything that I was concerned about is being addressed and looked at. I think a lot of people have spent a lot of time and, recognize the benefits, but want to make sure that it's the right thing for the district.
It does seem to be a lot of questions, but anything that is worth doing needs to be really vetted out. And I think that thoughtful and cautious proceeding forward is the way to go. Anyone else? Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Can I actually just share something? with
Sure.
you? I don't want to be redundant, but I feel like such a big piece of this, the reason to do it is mental health. And I have some numbers that I think have possibly been shared before, but I think it's pretty relevant with everything going on today. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the CDC, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration are advocating for later school start times for adolescents. These are the experts on our kids saying, you should do this, it's important. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that school should not begin before 8:30 a.m. for adolescents. According to the National Sleep Foundation, 90% of teens do not get the amount of sleep they need per night to function at their best. That's a huge amount. That's a lot. They experience what is called everyday jet lag, and it is largely due to school hours being misaligned with their biological rhythms. They also state that there is not a single part of a teenager's life that is not adversely affected by lack of sleep, physiologically, cognitively, and emotionally. 20% of teens aged 13 to 18 have a serious mental illness. The incidence of depression rises 500% in teens. Depression is a major risk in teen suicide. For each 1 hour of sleep lost, there's a 38% increase in depression. For each 1 hour of sleep lost, there is a 58% increase in suicide attempts. There's also a correlation between chronic sleep deprivation and mood swings, impulsive, risky, and inappropriate behavior, aggression, and substance abuse. Teens who sleep 5 or less hours per night have significantly higher rates of violent crimes, including physical fights and threatened violence using a weapon, compared with teens who sleep 8 to 10 hours per night, which is the amount recommended by all medical professionals and sleep experts. It's something to think about. Sleep, mental illness, stress, depression, aggression, violence, substance abuse, suicide. This is a serious public health epidemic, and it makes a difference. That 1 hour, it really does make a difference. Children need to have healthy bodies and healthy minds to be successful learners. It's our responsibility to come together as parents, teachers, and as a community to support our children's physical, cognitive, and emotional health and well-being. This is about making their health a priority.
Thank you for your input. I think you speak for, Tom Frank is not here tonight as one of our fellow board members, and he had written a letter to me stating many of the same things you were saying. And I think that is our primary focus for delving into this and to addressing this issue. I think it's very compelling, and obviously our students are our biggest priority. So I will add that Tom Frank feels very strongly about that too. And but I do think that as it is, it's a community-based decision, and we need to.
Absolutely.
I think we've got a great place to start. I think you've got some great questions to go forward with, and I think that we'll just keep cautiously moving towards what's best for everyone. And I appreciate you being here, and thank you very much for your.
I also wanted to add one thing to the to athletics, because based on the research I've done, I know it's often the biggest pushback is from the athletics departments, but as it was noted there, that extra hour of sleep, coaches in other states, towns that have were initially in opposition are now supporting it, saying I'm getting so much more out of my athletes. But it's also documented that sports-related injuries go down significantly as well. And that if you're not getting enough sleep, you're almost 2 times as likely to have a sports-related injury. So that's a big deal, and I think that it's
there are a lot of, that we appreciate your insight, because that is,
absolutely.
and that's why we're even talking about it in the first place, because we understand that there are a lot of components to this, and that is definitely an important one.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing would be to just say, it's too tough to do, and clearly we feel that it's important enough to continue looking at and to look at the challenges and try to see how to overcome them.
I think, there's a lot of out-of-the-box thinking that we can come together as a community and say, instead of should we do it, we need to do it, and let's figure out and tackle it as a community, and not railroad anybody, but come together.
And it's, so moving forward, I think what you were saying, let's get some of these answers, let's get our stakeholders, get some more surveys, and get people's input, and move forward. But thank you very much for that. I look forward to hearing more about this in the fall.
Thank you for your work. Thanks for your input.
We appreciate your input, and all of the work on that leadership committee too, and the rest of you on that committee.
Susan Selena was on it as well.
And I know you all work very hard to do that. That said, thank you. Anyone else have any other questions or comments on the school start time? So that's a lot of information that we have to keep working towards. Public audience, well, that's that. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 26th, for business as usual. And I have nothing else, so that I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Something I gotta